Okay, we're going to get started tonight. My name is John Crow. I'm the president of the Osterville Village Association. A number of our directors are here with us, and some will be through the audience tonight. We've got a lot to go over, so we're going to try to move our way through it. I want to acknowledge that I think Matt Levesque is here as the town council president tonight. I want to acknowledge him, and David Bogan over here is our town councilor from precinct 5. First thing, secretary's report from last month. Did everybody get a chance to read it?
I would be accepted.
Got a second?
Second.
Okay. Any additions or changes? Seeing none, I'll accept the director's report for March 1st, 2022. Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
John,
thanks.
I abstained because I wasn't here.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. The treasurer's report. Our treasurer is off today, so he went away for vacation, so we'll get that after next week. Going to the Osterville Business and Professionals Association report, Gail Nightingale.
The plans have been finalized for our sidewalk sales day on Saturday, May 7th. You'll see posters around for that. It will include a food drive from 10 to 1, drop off at Ralton Trust on Riano Avenue, a dog parade at 11 starting at the library, and many other events all day. We thank OVA for sponsoring the Cape Jazz music. We are still waiting to hear if we are going to get a donation from the town tourism grants towards the printing of our Osterville Village directory and calendar of events. The directory is in the printing stage now and should be available by May 1st. The town said decisions would be made by March 25th, but we haven't heard anything yet. David, maybe you could check on that for us.
Sure.
Our next steering committee meeting is April 19th, where we will finalize plans for our spring cocktail party in May and our annual breakfast meeting in June. Plans are being made for Village Day on Saturday, July 16th. We have received the parade permit from the town. Could we have a vote of the OVA response to the 2 Shriners groups, the band and the clowns, for a total of $2,500? This is the same amount that has been donated by OVA in previous years. Theme of this year's parade is the luck of the Irish. And if we could have a vote for the $2,500 so that we can go ahead with the plans for the Shriners groups.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Respectfully submitted by Gail Nightingale, Chairman of OVA.
Okay, moving on, there's a project going on, a housing project going on 35 Scudder Avenue in Hyannis. And tonight we have an old friend of mine, Milton Berglund, who's going to do a presentation about what that's all about. And Milton and I go back a long way. We started working together in, I think, 2010 or 11 on what was known as the problem properties ordinances here in the town. And those have become pretty successful. And so we go back a long way. And Milton, when you get a chance, go ahead and start up.
Thank you very much. My position correctly in the room is this
I think you'd be
right
fine.
place to be.
I think you'd be fine.
I do have a handout here that I'd like to distribute, and perhaps some of you can help me with that. So that follow along. I appreciate the invitation from John. We worked together on many different things over the years. I'd like to identify myself as a resident of Hyannis. And we live in a property, my wife and I, have been in the family since 1955. So I go back quite a ways to some history of what's been going on in the town. What we have here is a housing project that's going on a golf course that is adjacent to a wetlands area. Wetlands area being Stewart Street and the upland area that goes up to West Main Street and beyond into Betty's Pond. And what we'd like to do in place of the housing project is to set up a parkland for recreational purposes. What we then are seeing is a argument between housing development in the town of Barnstable and those who are in favor of additional parkland fully developed for the residents to use. The current state of affairs with this whole argument is that it is right now going through subcommittee hearings of the Cape Cod Commission. There will be one next Tuesday. There was one 2 weeks ago, back to Tuesday. I testified at the earlier one, and I will again on Tuesday night. Ultimately, it's the town council of the town of Barnstable which will decide the issue whether to go forward for the housing project as currently designed, rethink it, or deny it. Final vote is for the town council. And what we're aiming for as, let's say, proponents of keeping this golf course as parkland is that we would need at least 5 votes on the town council of 13 in order to force a change in the developer's plans. That's the objective. So what's at stake is really the highest and best use of the land in question. Let's face it, the developers have been targeting golf courses, playgrounds, open land in order to further develop housing. They have to keep the business rolling. Their business model is to develop the properties, then sell it off to investors, but continue to operate it for a period of time, usually as rental housing. Now, I tie this into the Osterville Cotuit area. Open land is already a place where developers will be examining whether they can develop. You're very wise to set aside the Armstrong Kelly Park in the hands of the trustees of the foundation, so there could not be a development there. I think you're fortunate that the old East Bay Inn became an attractive housing development without a massive high rise on that location. So what we're seeing now is a argument that I think the housing lobby has been trying to say we have a housing shortage very seriously, not only on the Barnstable, but throughout the Cape. This is going to help. I should identify the Save Twin Brooks organization is absolutely in favor of housing, just not in this particular location. We are very much in favor of additional housing for the labor sources, people who live here, and we actually welcome a good organization like the current one, LENNAR, subsidiary of the LENNAR company, LENNAR Multifamily Development it's called, very responsible company. They have a model they've been using in Atlanta and Houston and other places that they plan to import to this golf course location and set up 312 housing units in that location. Very large, high-rise buildings, which would use about 20 acres of the available 40 acres. 10 acres are already in sufficiently close to wetlands that they cannot be developed in any case. What they're saying is that they would have the 10 acres surrounding the buildings in available use for the public. But the housing development itself is a gated community. So what we are now seeing is a setup where the housing shortage is being used as the principal argument against using this property for recreational purposes and reserving it for the citizens at large. We should ask the question, what's the origin of the housing shortage? Well, there are 1,500 to 1,600 short-term rentals here in the town of Barnstable, for the potential for that number to go up. I think the short-term rental development, which is fairly recent, has withdrawn from the available workforce a substantial amount of housing that could be available for seasonal or even full-time workers. Housing advocates, in particular the group that has been involved with the housing advocacy for many years, absolutely feel as though the arguments for preserving this as parkland is a threat to their position as housing advocates. They therefore are setting up this opposition between environmentalists and housing, not a healthy development. Where are the town of Barnstable's preferences right now? Well, what we do know is that the Planning and Development Authority in the town is favoring multifamily dwellings, denser development. Single family homes on quarter-acre, half-acre lot is not the preferred solution for urban development. Very large multifamily. And that has a lot to do with the influence of the housing authorities. We, on the other hand, are concerned with some deep environmental concern in this area. Stewart's Creek is where our house is, and I've watched that deteriorate, degrade as an estuary for many, many years. Not the least of which was a causeway that was put up years ago after the 1938 hurricane, and a culvert too narrow, which the Army Corps of Engineers did not correct by building a replacement, simply too small. Fred Chirigotis, who used to be president of the town council, said to me at one point, you know, we really ought to build a bridge there and open the whole thing up, so it'll be a natural flow. Probably the right thing to do today, but I think that ship has left the dock, at least in most of our lifetime. So we've got now an impaired estuary with a housing development going up on the border of the two brooks that define, as you can see on that map, where Twin Brook is. The golf course right now has 500, 600 trees, grassland, bushes. My personal view is that if you take down any number of trees, the company will identify how much they plan to take down, but it's looking north of 300 trees. That will change the hydrological balance in that Stewart's Creek estuary. You will have a faster runoff. You will have further degradation of that rather impaired estuary over time. So what to do about this? Well, the solution, at the end of the day, has been suggested by the Barnstable Land Trust. The Barnstable Land Trust is saying, well, look, let's scale down the size of this housing project to a much smaller number, maybe even increase the number of homes that will be available for subsidized housing, 40B housing. Right now, that project, as currently designed by LNC, is a market rate housing development, with market rates not yet determined, obviously, but roughly $1,500 to maybe $3,000 a month for a larger unit. That's not going to solve the housing crisis for those people who are seasonal workers or low-income workers. They're not in the picture. This is a different audience that they're going for. So make no mistake about it. This is not housing that will take care of the labor force shortage that the town has. So what would we like to see there? Well, the first thing would be to put in, for those who are currently living in the town of Hyannis and in the surrounding areas, a place with recreational opportunities, playgrounds. We'd like to see some set aside of land that would be used for people who wanted to have community gardens, bike trails. A vision that I would very much like to see, and I think Mark Ells would as well, is to take a pathway all the way from Twin Brooks right down to the causeway on either side, one or the other, and have a walkway and a bikeway going down to the beach. It'd be a perfect thing for urban park. That's our vision of it. The housing can go in any number of different locations. I think we've been watching on North Street, the corner of Stetson, a large hole in the ground for years. When I asked the president of the LNC, rather nice fellow actually, had he even considered that spot? No. Why not? Golf courses are easier to build on. So what I urge you to do as citizens concerned with these kinds of issues is to let your town councilor, Mr. Berglund over here, know how you think, what your point of view is. Write him a letter or go to his office hours. Those of you who are here tonight may actually live in Mashpee. Talk to Paula Schnepp. I called her once, the dear lady had a bike accident, I think it was in September, October. We had a nice talk. I think best if a resident of Mashpee, as a resident of Osterville, Mr. Bogan, also with Paula Schnepp. I'm doing my share with my own precinct representative who is very much an advocate of more housing and not for the environmental. So I'll close there and open it up to questions and answers. And please, I hope there were enough handouts. I didn't expect such a large group of people. But here we are. Any questions, any comments?
Are they concerned with climate change?
I beg your pardon, ma'am?
Are they concerned with climate change?
Oh, yeah. Yes. We have a one fellow in the town who is kind of an expert on what's happening with sea rise. And the problem that we're potentially facing is with sea rise, you could have a good deal of the Twin Brooks current property, which would be on the border of the ocean in some 15, 20 years' time. And that is an issue. Anyone else?
Yes, how much would a parkland cost and how would it be financed?
Good question, very good question. First, I should identify that LNC has already a purchase and sale agreement negotiated with the current owner of the entire property. And therefore, we don't know what that purchase and sale agreement has as a price. We believe the entire property is worth something in the order of $20 billion. And the physical property, which is the buildings for the hotel, would be somewhere between 14, 15, 16 million of that total, leaving the golf course currently appraised at 3.9 million, probably open market value of 5 million. Now, the Barnstable Land Trust or even Mass Autobahn, we believe would have the fundraising resources to be able to swing the purchase of the 40 acres. We'd have to test that. There would have to be, however, another solution for the existing resort and conference center, and that's a separate issue. And how that would be financed, it would be by a subsequent buyer from the present Finch Group. We don't know what that would be, but probably somewhere less or more than $15 million. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Milton, do you know what the plans are for the hotel and conference center? Is it planned to be, is up for sale, or what are the plans for that? Is he looking for a buyer? I don't know.
I'll be very candid with you. That's a murky issue right now, because we have had some information that there already is a purchase and sale agreement that has been negotiated for the resort and conference center. And there was a word that the conference center was going to close for a period of time subsequent to renovation. We've heard nothing more about it, and that may simply be a market rumor. Right now, we have to face the Finch Group, which owns that conference center, has had it for sale for many, many years. And those who have been in those premises would represent it as being rather neglected and run down at this point. So it is potential that if the town needs more housing, and there is a developer who's willing to take some of those rooms and convert those to be into a housing development. What it would not be, I think, feasible is for any developer to do it entirely as a 40B housing development, because that's too expensive relative to the profit that they would get out of that kind of development. So the argument that it's either the current project or a 40B is a hollow project, a hollow argument, I think. Right now, my bet is that there will be another subsequent developer who will take over the conference center about simultaneously with the resolution of the 40 acres that is currently the golf course.
Matt, go ahead.
Pardon?
Matt has a question for you.
Yes, sir.
With all due respect.
Please.
What I struggle with, and I appreciate your point, and I'm not actually pro anything. I'm trying to stay neutral on this project as president of the council, because it's actually not something I can necessarily debate as many know. Right. But what I hear in different arguments on either side is, and there's a lot with the Twin Brooks, is that there are a number of inaccuracies, and I struggle with that. Not only as an elected official, but as a resident of the town of Barnstable. That there isn't 1,600 short-term rentals in the town of Barnstable. There's actually only 600 and change active short-term rentals. There was a presentation at a town council meeting recently. We only have 1,200 registered rentals, even in the town of Barnstable. Never mind, that's year-round, and so for possible short-term rentals, but only 600 active.
Were actually given by a member of the town government.
True story. It was actually, no, it's an independent contractor that we hired that gave us those numbers, that did their own research and gave it to us.
No, I mean about the 1,500, 1,600.
Maybe total rentals, but I don't know if it's a short-term rental. We just talking about active short-term rentals. All I'm saying is, yes, it's an issue. I'm not saying it's the issue. It's just that, and that a lot of this housing, talking to different people in the community, and again, I'm not, you're not going to debate me, but I have a hard time I just want to make sure everybody understands and really does and plays it out, and this is a piece of private property. If somebody here owned a piece of property in Oyster Harbors or whatever, you want to sell your property and some next door neighbor said to you, hey, I don't think you should be able to sell your property. I think you should sell that to me and give that to the Audubon Society. How would you feel about that? You know what I mean? Because that's your private property and that's their private property. It's not open space. And I get it. The fact that some people believe golf courses should be considered open space. At this point in time, it's considered to be developed space. So here they are trying to build housing. That's what they do. I know the Brazilian community, they're willing to pay $2,000 to $3,000 to find some place to live because they have no place to live and they work 3 jobs and they make enough money to afford that. So to say that it's not going to help people in the community, I struggle with that because it will. However, and environmentally, it's a golf course. They've already studied out, and I understand this research comes from LENNAR, so you have to weigh it out. It's a golf course, grass clippings, fertilizer, nitrogen loading over 5, could be cut in half. And they're taking the 10 acres that they're, obviously, like you said, it's already undeveloped. They're taking the bordering 10 acres after that, and they're allowing that to go back to its natural habitat. Even though they're cutting down trees in the 20 acres that they're going to build on, it should be replenished by the 10 acres around to go back. So, and NEPA's approved of it, Massachusetts Environmental Protection Agency, they gave the certificate early on. I just want people to make sure that.
Let's get some.
I'm sorry, I'm done now, but I just want to make sure. I struggle.
Let's take NEPA, just right there. That is not a certificate of approval for the project, correct? NEPA did was to say the complications of the project do not rise to require state intervention. There is not a state level EPA agency which has to come down and inspect and then give it approval. That is the
I'm sorry, yes, right.
So I have to be very careful how that was represented. I know that there are those who are saying they already have a Massachusetts environmental policy certificate. Oh, no. Now, that 1,500 to 1,600 of the short-term rentals came, I believe, right out of the planning and development department as a statement to the Cape Cod Times. That's where I got it.
Okay.
Now, that may be those who have signed up, right, to do, not necessarily fully occupied at any point in time. It could be at any point in time, much lower than that. But on offer for a short-term rental is 1,500, 1,600. But other questions, please? There are others in the audience. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to thank you. I'm kind of new to all this, but listening to your points, they seem very well thought out. The research, they're very intentional. It makes a lot of sense. I think we need people like you and your way of thinking. We all live on a sandbar. You can't be too careful. I take offense to the Brazilians. The ones in my neighborhood are doing really well. They have beautiful houses. The ones who work on my house are doing even better. I mean, you can't just categorize a
No,
group
I'm
of
just talking
people
to people
who
in
are-
the community.
who need
Yeah,
work.
yes, I
My
do.
friends are, my son has moved back home. Okay, my friends' kids have moved back home, and you know what, they're all doing okay too. Because maybe they wanted to live in Boston, but maybe you adjust, you know, and maybe you make compromises. And I just want to really thank you and applaud you. I think we can't be too careful on a sandbar. And I really appreciate all your well thought out points. So
Well, thank you for that. I might say where this is headed. At the end of the day, I think the Barnstable Land Trust is on the right track with a mixed development for this property, the entire property. That is to say, some further housing development, some further renovation of the present resort and conference center, perhaps for those who wish to have it a exhibition center, but much less housing. And actually, maybe the best thing would be much more in the way of low-income housing prices, rather than what is currently being offered. You know, as a long-term resident here, I personally find it a little bit offensive to have a developer come in with a model that they're applying in Oklahoma City, Houston, Atlanta, and Plunkett right in the middle of the town.
You don't think it fits?
The village of Hyannis. It's, and the other thing I might say is on a personal basis, as a kid, about 50 years old, and so forth, got the property my parents did. I used to canoe all the way up Stewart's Creek, right up to the point where it came to West Main Street and back. Some years later, I took my kids up there in a canoe. You can't do that today. You cannot do that today. I used to have big arguments with Mark Ells about putting a dredge in there. Dredge. We had people from the Woods Hole group come down and say, no, too late, fellows, too late, because the base is now too high. So anything that goes in that bordering wetlands area that would further impair the water flow, the natural seepage into Stewart Creek, I think personally is the wrong thing to do. And that's why I joined the board, and I'm advocating in audiences like this, what is the highest and best use of that land. And it is not what is currently proposed.
Also, just one last point, I mean, a park, we're all praised after the pandemic, benefits everyone. Mental health, physical health, emotional health, you need that. I mean, now they call it, if you walk in the woods now, there's a word for it. You know, you can't, I mean, we all know that we need that. That benefits thousands of people on the Cape. 400 housing units, yes, okay, benefits 400 families. I mean, you know, you have to factor that in as well. So,
Sure. If you have lots of residents, let's say in the town or village of Hyannis, 12,000, less or more, and you take what I still call open land, currently not built on, by definition of it, where are they going to have an opportunity for recreation? Where are the kids going to go to ride a bike? Well, Bisbee Park doesn't work. So best to have something for a growing community of parkland, as much as you can have of it, of those 40 acres. That's what's at stake. Someone else?
Oh, I have no question. You've articulated the issues rather well.
I beg your pardon?
You set the issues forth very well.
John?
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate
You're
your
most
comment.
welcome.
Yeah,
I'm going to stay for the wind farm.
okay. All right, thank you. Moving on, the next,
Before we move to the next, may I ask you
Yes.
folks a question?
Yeah.
What's the process going forward with this right now? Where do we stand?
Okay. The subcommittee of the Cape Cod Commission will write up its recommendations in a development agreement, which will then go to the full Cape Cod Commission. The document you have in front of you lists down the next steps, actually. Once the Cape Cod Commission has, let's say, made a decision, if they disapprove of the project, it stops right there and has to be renegotiated.
Disapprove of the housing project?
Of the housing
Or
project.
the open space project?
Well, it's on the open space. It's on the
Well,
48.
they're reviewing just the housing.
Yes.
Okay.
Nothing to do with the hotel. Now, once the Cape Cod Commission, let's say, has approved it, then it goes to the Planning and Development Department in town of Barnstable. Elizabeth Jenkins and her team will then come up with their own formulation of what is the right agreement for the development. They have to go through some discussion with the zoning board, but then ultimately it goes to the town council. That's the last step. And the issue, I suppose, first for the town council is that they're going to have to look at what goes on with rezoning the current land use. Because currently the highest and best use of the land is for single-family homes. In this context, that's probably a non-starter. So then if they agree to a development agreement which calls for something else, that's where the vote comes.
For zoning, you need 9 supermajorities, so that have 9 votes out of 13. That's why you mentioned 5 votes.
So I think we have an agreement there. So I think it's touch and go. And we're hoping that the sensitivities of the population of the town of Barnstable will galvanize in favor of having this project rejected and renegotiated.
thank you, Bill. Okay, next issue we're going to go on is Commonwealth Wind. A number of our directors met March 23rd, a week and a half ago today, with representatives of Avangrid, which is the management group that is dealing with the wind project that's connected with 2 other wind projects down southwest of Martha's Vineyard. And it's out in the Atlantic. And we met with Patrick Johnson, who's this gentleman here, and he's the manager of external affairs. I figure I'll let Patrick go over what he presented to us with you, and then we can have some questions for him after he's done.
John, thank you so much, and I'll just sort of give a quick intro as I get started. It's great to be with all of you, and John, I really want to thank you for the invitation tonight. and for the time you spent with me and my colleagues and your other folks from the executive committee. I really appreciate that. So there's Pat Johnson, as John said, lead external affairs for Avangrid Renewables offshore wind team. I'm a Kate Cotter from Brewster. I've been here my whole life and spent part of this job, about 5 years, working for State Senator Julian Sear as his chief of staff. And so, I know the issues on the Cape relatively well and had the great fortune to work with, leaders across the Cape and constituents, especially during the COVID pandemic, which was often so difficult. So I'm really excited about this opportunity to be working with Avangrid Renewables and working on these projects. So I have a couple of visuals I'll give you here, and I'm going to be brief because I want to save as much time as I can for questions. So first, put this up here. I'm hoping folks on this see this. It looks like they. And if anybody wants me to move this around, please let me know. And I do want to say as well, thank you to Council President Beck and Councilor Bogan for being here this evening as well. So Avangrid Renewables, first of all, one of the largest energy companies, or sort of Avangrid Renewables is owned by a company called Avangrid. Our headquarters for Avangrid is based in Connecticut. And we have a number of divisions. We have networks and utilities businesses, and our particular division is the renewable energy division. So we have onshore wind projects around the country. We have solar projects around the country, and we're pretty new in the last decade to offshore wind. So this lease area see here, both the blue area and the yellow area, this whole area here was bought in 2015 by two companies, Avangrid Renewables and another company called Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners. So those two companies jointly formed an LLC and called it Vineyard Wind. So when you hear of Vineyard Wind, that's a 50-50 company owned by Avangrid Renewables and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners. They developed Vineyard Wind together, as you've all seen. That's now under construction and has received all relevant approvals by the federal government, state government, the relevant conservation commissions locally, and that's under construction. Obviously, everybody's familiar with the Dowses Beach construction and construction on Strawberry Hill Road, substation up in Independence Park. That's all for Vineyard Wind, and that's this blue area right here. This is an 800 megawatt project in this blue area. Projects I'm working on are in the yellow area. It's really sort of split in half here into two projects. So sort of the middle part of this area is called Park City Wind. You may have heard that if you follow local meetings here in town. Park City Wind is also 800 megawatts, and that project is going to Craigville Beach. And that's sort of pretty far into the permitting process. It was selected in 2019. And so that project is probably another year, maybe a year and a half from receiving full federal approval. And then the cables for that project will go into Craigville Beach. And then the one we're here to talk about is brand new, that was just selected by the state of Massachusetts in December. It's called Commonwealth Wind. So Commonwealth Wind is the most southern portion, the bottom of this yellow area. And that was selected by Governor Baker and his administration, 1,200 megawatt project, so larger, in December. So that project, as we've been developing it, we decided in February, after lots of analysis of landing locations, that we'd like to propose landing those cables at Dowses Beach here in Osterville. And similar construction of the cables landing under the beach, just like what's going on right now at Covell's and what's going to go on at Craigville. And that's what we're here proposing. So as John mentioned, we've been meeting with leaders here in Osterville, meeting with him and others throughout the town, bringing these plans to the forefront, getting feedback. And we're going to be doing that for the next several years. We're at the beginning of this process. Again, Vineyard Wind first started, I think, its permitting process in 2017. Park City Wind started in 2019. This just got selected. So you haven't missed anything. You don't need to worry. We're right at the beginning of this process. And we're going to have several years of intense community engagement, open house after open house, incorporating feedback. We haven't started any negotiation on any kind of host community agreement with the town of Barnstable. None of that has happened yet. We're at the very beginning of this process. So I'll show you a couple other slides. just to visualize the sort of path we're talking about from the lease areas south of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket. We're using the same cable corridor going up between the two islands. To the very east are where the two Vineyard Wind cables are going to be, which makes sense because they land at Covell's, the farthest east location. In the middle of this corridor will be the Park City Wind cables, landing the center at Craigville, and then to the far west will be our cables proposing to land at Covell's. So that's kind of important. You really don't want this work to be crossing cables. So that's sort of how the cables will be aligned. You know, the other cable we just sort of navigate around is out of Dowses Beach in Hyannis. That's a national grid cable that powers Nantucket. So that's sort of the outline of where offshore cables are in Nantucket Sound right now. I want to do, so lastly, let's talk about landing and offshore route, and then get into some questions. So this sort of shows you the alignment of the onshore, on-road routes for the three projects. So Covell's Beach in green, and I'll leave this up for folks to look at afterwards, lands at Covell's, goes up Craigville Beach Road to the east, then up Strawberry Hill Road, Finney's Lane, ends up at a substation in Independence Park in Hyannis. Park City Wind lands at Craigville Beach, goes north on Craigville Beach Road. And then we're currently in the midst of a lot of conversation, really great conversation with the Centerville Civic Association and other organizations in Centerville about the exact route we're going to take through Centerville. Remember, this project started 2 years ago. We're still determining the route with local community input with those leaders and those organizations. So we're trying to figure out with the community and with the local elected officials, local councilors there, are we going to go right through Centerville Main Street, through the historic district by the Centerville Library? Are we going to go up South Main Street and go more to the east to try to avoid that very tight historic district? And there are folks who have different opinions. We're working that with them right now. And then these are just purely some potential routes that we think could work, that we haven't done boring and engineering analysis, under road analysis on yet, but they're just some conversation starters that we shared with John and we're sharing with others. So landing at Dowses Beach, and then we envision there are two ways sort of north out of that part of the village. Either we go up East Bay Road or we go up Hyannis Ave. And then the question is, do we go more to the west, up East Bay and then up Old Mill, the Lumber Mill Road? Or do we go up Hyannis, then go up Main Street north, maybe end up merging off onto Osterville West Barnstable Road? Eventually, we've got to end up at the West Barnstable substation, which is on Oak Street, just north of Route 6, is where we plug into the electric grid. So these are just potential routes, and we're going to be looking for lots of community input from you all and other residents of Osterville and what folks have for opinions. Again, just want to remind you that, this is new for a lot of folks here. And Centerville, it's kind of old hat for a lot of folks who've been working with Centerville for a while. But this lands under the beach, deep under the sand, and then all the cables would be under the roads. We would excavate and create a duct bank that would be encased under the road, nothing overhead. Everything would be sealed under asphalt, and through a community benefit agreement, host community agreement with the town. We would determine all the obvious things in terms of our proper road resealment, etc. The other thing, last thing is there's obviously a lot of financial benefit for the town of Barnstable to these projects. For the Vineyard Wind project and the Park City Wind project, we have host community agreements with we'll have a host community agreement done for Vineyard Wind. We're almost done with the host community agreement for Park City Wind. Both those agreements stipulate we're going to spend $16 million for both projects to the town of Barnstable's general fund. And then we're going to pay all our full taxes. So for this project, so that's $32 million total between those two projects in tax revenue to the town plus other property taxes. And then for Dowses Beach, we haven't, for this landing, we haven't started that negotiation. So what that figure will be, what the parameters will be of that host community agreement, none of that has even started yet. So, once this is all done between these three projects, we may be one of the largest taxpayers in the entire town, and we're not taking any services. We're not sending anybody to school. We are just providing tax revenue and have strict obligations under our agreements with the town for upkeep, for maintenance, and for the highest standards of protecting the environment, particularly for our substation locations. Maybe last thing, we don't have a substation location for this project yet. We're gonna have to build one. It'll be somewhere likely well north of Osterville. We're looking at other locations closer to Route 6. The Park City Wind substation location is going to be on Shoot Flying Hill Road, where the current Knights Inn property is. And again, the Vineyard Wind one is in Independence Park. So we kind of need to look something more to the west in this general area up here is where we're looking. But we haven't determined that yet. So hopefully that's enough detail for now, John. I'm happy to take some questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Before we go to questions, we'll go right away to that. Just want to mention that I asked them some further follow-up questions after a meeting on March 23rd. March 23rd is the first time any of us had ever heard that we were coming for this third phase that's coming on our beach here. And Patrick, who's a manager of external affairs there, and Ken Kimmel, who's also the vice president of project development, were those we met with a number of other members of their group. So anyway, I have some questions we asked them that probably will fill you in on a lot more information, and then their answers. And Patrick has said we can go with the answer. You can give the answers, but I can read them for you
Sure.
also. But I want to open it now for anybody who'd like to ask a question that isn't heard. Gail.
I'm the chairman of the Business Association. And if you go up Leonard Avenue, we might as well close our businesses. We've seen the disruption on Craigville Beach Road for the past year. You can't drive from here to Hyannis without detours all over the place. As far as going through the very center of our business community, all of our businesses are just getting over a couple of bad years from COVID. They're just getting back on track. And I know it would discourage an awful lot of businesses from staying open. People just would avoid coming to Osterville. We're probably the second busiest business community in the town of Osterville, other than Hyannis. And it would kill our businesses. And I would not like to see the whole of the center disrupted. You go by at least 5 churches that would be disrupted by going up Vineyard Avenue on Main Street. If you have to come on Dowses Beach, I would encourage you to go down Old Mill Road and go out to Route 28 that way. But even Dowses Beach, it's a very fragile road going out there. You have to have a landing place. That parking lot would get, I think by the time you're through, it would just be demolished. The road that goes out there is barely 1 car wide. And to have big trucks going in and out over that causeway, I think just would be terrible. And I think I'm speaking on behalf of all the business people. I know there's a couple of business people here. We haven't discussed it at a steering committee, but I do know that I personally, and I can see a couple of them here that agree with me, that it would just be the worst thing for our business community to go through in the middle of Osterville.
Okay, thank you for feedback. I'm just going to take notes if folks, so as we go along, and if I can meet with you, I did reach out to you and Bobby Cox. I don't have the wrong email. If we can meet with you and the OBPA folks, business owner, we'd love to do that.
Be happy to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, right there.
So where are you gonna have, you're gonna have windmills? You have to capture the wind. How does that happen?
Sure. So the windmills will all be placed about 35 miles south, probably actually more like 40, where these ones will be. So this is Martha's Vineyard right here. So the whole lease area, this is about it's about 20 south right here of Edgertown. So this is where this whole lease
clarify,
area.
like how far offshore, how many they are and how tall they are? So we're looking out at, instead of beautiful ocean and oh, there goes the ferry and isn't this relaxing, we're looking at wind turbines. So
No.
how many are there going to be on Craigville Beach? How many are you predicting on Dowses Beach? How far offshore are they and how big are they?
Sure.
And what is the rate of failure for them? Because they said that most of the jobs go towards fixing them when they break down.
Okay, really appreciate that question. So this whole lease area where the actual wind turbines will be Again, this is 20 miles south of Martha's Vineyard. So we're,
What about the ones off Craigville Beach that we're talking about?
that's just the cables, just the undersea cables, which are gonna be, I'll show you right on this map here. So again, this would be the top of the Vineyard Wind lease area right here, well south of Martha's Vineyard. And then this corridor in blue is where the cables, the undersea cables are gonna be laid that are bringing the power from those wind turbines undersea. The cables we buried about 5 feet below the sea floor.
What do you bring in to dig that far down
So-
into the ocean? Like, what is gonna be out there? What kind of ships?
Sure.
How does this work?
So it's something called a hydro plow. So there's obviously there's a ton of new technology and innovation in this entire industry. So a hydro plow, which you think of a very large snow plow, I guess, would make a corridor undersea for each of the cables. You then lay the
On the sea
cable
floor.
on the seafloor,
So
and then it's backfilled by the sand that's displaced.
how
once-
wide on the sea floor?
The average cable, I think, is about, I've seen an image of it. Well, average subsea cable is about maybe 1.5 feet thick. They're not as big as you think. And they're laid underneath, once there's the hydro plow makes a path, they're laid in that path, kind of in a trench that goes usually about 5 feet. And then it's filled back in with the sand. There are certain places, particularly in this area right here, that kind of have a rocky bottom, not a flat sandy bottom that we're known for in Nantucket Sound, where we have to probably put the cable more on the top of those rocks and then cover it with other rock or, secure it in other ways. And that would all be determined both with the town of Edgartown's Conservation Commission, particularly with this area here, and with the relevant state environmental
And what if
agencies.
they say no?
What's that?
What if they say no?
Well, we're gonna work with them. That's the beauty of local control.
What is this depth where you would have the rocks from the rocks you say that you would have to put on top of a rocky cropping? What's the water depth at that level?
That's a good question. I don't know, but I'd be happy to find out and hopefully get your email and follow up with you.
So what exactly would be off Dowses Beach?
Cables would come in. I don't have this blown up, but I'm happy to show folks this. So I don't know if you've been down, anybody happen to been down to Covell's Beach? If you happen to be down, there's a barge or called a jackup vessel, about 1,500 yards off of Covell's. And what they're doing there is they're doing something called horizontal directional drilling. So they're digging directly down about 1,500 yards off of Dowses Beach, drilling directly down, and then they use sort of a powered remote controlled device or sort of burrowing device, which then makes a path for the cables that comes up under the parking lot at Dowses Beach. So it starts at a great depth and then it kind of comes in at an angle and lands right in the parking lot at Dowses.
To
So-
Gail's point, I saw Covell Beach when they were doing it. It was a disaster.
Absolutely, yeah, it's contained. I've been there many times. Public access has been maintained the entire time.
It was a disaster.
Well,
Yeah, it looked like an earthquake.
well, it's being fully repaired. Right now, they're ending their operations there. They are going to restore that completely. All of the operations, everything, any damage to the sand, the parking lot, that's all going to be fully restored. Same at Craigville Beach, that's all fully spelled out in our host
And
community.
Dowses does have a different set, like Gail mentioned, of circumstances, it's really fragile, like she said, like that. Like, I mean, with the water and the rising sea levels, it's even been flooding. So I also kind of have a question. I take issue, you said this is also new, but we're environmentally protective. But how do you know that when it's also new? Like the seafloor, we have no idea what that's doing to the fish. And you're on Cape Cod. These are fishermen here. This is sea life here. There are whales coming in right now, right whales we're trying to protect.
Yeah.
Where are the studies showing this is okay for the sea life?
Many studies. So obviously, Vineyard
Let me
Wind.
interrupt for a minute here. Just be fair to Patrick, I think we should have, raise your hand and ask one question. then we can come back
Sure.
for a minute. So if you want to answer what she'd asked you, or if you're done,
Yes.
then we'll go to the next person.
Absolutely.
So
So
let's
there
try to
have
keep
been,
it, just one at a time.
thank you, John. Yeah, there have been countless studies on avian impacts, impacts to right whales, other marine life. So much
Or what
stuff.
sources?
Every Mass Audubon, National Wildlife Federation, the New England Pirate.
Mary, Can we just have one question at a
Yeah,
time?
Their website.
Over here on the other side of
yes,
the room.
there's a lot on vineyardwind.com, and we're gonna add more to our websites as well, and other independent entities have done their own. We paid for some have been independently paid for. There have been lots and lots of studies. That's why the federal government and state governments approved Vineyard Wind for all that study.
Over here, yes, ma'am.
I just have a question though. I knew about Craigville and Covell, and I do know that part of the host agreement, at least this is what it said on your website, is that they're gonna get the parking lot paved and a new bathhouse or whatever they destroy, they fix up. Okay.
Absolutely.
My question is, that's federal lands, federal waters, excuse me, where the turbines are. There's another project after these, after Commonwealth Wind, that's going south.
Yep.
Let's see it on your.
Yeah, I'm happy to. This might
you had
help.
it now.
Yeah. What's some other?
And my question is why,
We're talking about Mayflower Wind, which is talking the fountain, this one right here.
not the one going over towards.
Oh, that might be, so Mayflower Wind is looking at Somerset.
This is the next one, I was on your website.
Sure.
There's plans for cable to go into either Rhode Island or somewhere over Wareham,
Okay.
over that way.
Okay.
My question is, what was this? It sounds a little funny, but
Sure.
did Barnstable really want this put here? Or do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
Was that negotiated, like, Town of Barnstable said, sure, open this right up here?
No, that's a great question. So we do have for Commonwealth Wind and it's, I see now, I'm saying, it's this orange line right here that would land somewhere in
Yeah.
Bedford.
See the orange line? Yeah, that's not on your chart, but I think it should be.
Understand, well, I'll happy to tell you about it. So,
We don't know, maybe the
Sure.
Town of Barnstable said, ooh.
No.
This is more direct.
no, I'll tell you exactly what
We
happened there.
want your money.
So when our project was put together, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, the federal agency in charge, they like to have backup options. So they asked us and asked any developer, they want alternative options.
Okay.
So we, and the way this works is you can only propose to land power cables at a location where you have rights to plug into a substation. You have to purchase those rights years in advance. So we have rights, our company, at the West Barnstable Eversource substation in Oak Street.
Okay,
We also own rights at a substation in Acushnet, Mass.
all right.
So we have proposed an alternative that would only accommodate one cable, not all three cables that would be needed for this project, that would divert and go to the south coast. The challenges with that are
Could
significant.
you turn that?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Next time we'll have this in a larger, blown up image. So the problem with going through Buzzards Bay is it's extremely rocky. I mean, folks from that area like to say the glacier put all the rocks out in Buzzards Bay and left Nantucket Sound nice and sandy. So to put a cable through that area has not yet been done by any other offshore wind developer. One of the other companies, Mayflower Wind, is looking at going to Brayton Point in Somerset. We are looking at this, but we think it's not going to be feasible. Our preference strongly, our preferred option is to put all of the power for Commonwealth Wind into the town of Barnstable. But the town of Barnstable did not ask for a backup in the south coast.
And that's
This is just our,
fine. I just want to know the
plan.
history of that.
Yeah.
Negotiation.
I really appreciate that question. Thank you for spelling it out. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Obviously, Covell's is a landing spot, Craigville is a landing spot.
Yep.
If Craigville is now going to be the next spot that's done, and you're going into that substation that you have rights to there, why does it have to be a separate landing site? Will Craigville not accommodate two landing sites? And when you're doing the infrastructure for Park City,
Yep.
why couldn't you put in the infrastructure in for Commonwealth Wind at the same time.
Well, thank you, sir, for that question, and that's one that John had followed up with. So when I started with Avangrid in January, our engineering team was in the midst of trying to figure out, is there any way we can put all the cables for Park City Wind and Commonwealth Wind into Craigville Beach or somewhere on Long Beach Road and find points north to stay right at Craigville Beach. There was 2 rounds of engineering analysis on that done, which concluded in February. That engineering analysis found that that was not feasible for a couple of reasons. One reason is when you land at Craigville Beach, you might know if you travel up sort of north on Craigville Beach Road, you have to cross the Centerville River, right, where the Short Beach Road neighborhood is. So we can actually, there's not enough space in that sort of little bridge over the Centerville River for us to put our cables in that bridge. So we're going to need to micro tunnel our cables under the Centerville River and then reconnect north of the Centerville River under Craigville Beach Road. We have been meeting extensively with the neighbors at the Short Beach Road. All their neighbors, they have an association, have a great working relationship with them, have done lots of conversation about how we're going to do that drilling, how far the cables will be under the river. We've been working with the town councilor from that area. So we have a good deal of buy-in and comfort on that. It was found to put 3 more cables doing that horizontal directional drilling or micro tunneling for that, I should say, under the Centerville River is not going to work. The further part is what this, especially south of South Main Street, this part of Craigville Beach Road, our engineers found there's not enough space under that road to put the new sewer line that's going to be on Craigville Beach Road, other under road infrastructure, water line, and to put 5 cables, 5 offshore wind cables, which would be required for both projects under Craigville Beach Road. It's not going to work. The challenge is there's no other points north road other than Craigville Beach Road. So we have really no other under road option. So once that was exhausted in February, that's when we looked at Dowses Beach and said that's our next best option. That's when we started bringing this to first to town and then to John and other leaders here in Osterville as a proposal.
Could you come in at Long Beach, end of Long Beach, and then go across East Bay?
So we looked a lot at that. Obviously, the big challenge, the Centerville River obviously has a lot of environmental, concerns. Obviously, a lot of nitrogen in that river. It's a high priority to be, through sewering and other denitrification efforts. We did looked at a couple things. So we looked coming into East Bay, then going up the Centerville River and finding some way, either through a purchase of a property, to find some way north onto a public road that we could stay within Centerville via Long Beach. Couldn't find what worked that either crossed Long Beach or went into East Bay and then up Centerville River, sort of parallel with Long Beach. Couldn't figure out a way to make it work. We looked at options in West Bay. Obviously, with everybody knows about how much West Bay is filling in and the dredging needs are there, we couldn't find a viable option there. We looked at Loop Beach in Katuitt, looked at that extensively. Challenges there is much closer to home. It's got a decent sized parking lot for us to work in, but much closer to homes than at Dowses, and smaller roads versus when we land at Dowses, we either go up East Bay or Hyannis, and then we pretty much immediately have lots of main road options. We didn't have that at Loop Beach and Katuitt, but that's mainly where we looked because again, the goal was we really need to not cross other cables in Hyannis and Centerville. We really need to stay to the west, so that really meant finding an option in Osterville or Katuitt.
But if you went to the end of Long Beach and then went over to the East Bay boat landing,
Okay.
You would be on East Bay Road.
We could do that. I think the challenge is we run into aquaculture challenges. We're very sensitive to whatever cables we put in. We may need to, somebody mentioned, I think Gail, how narrow Dowses Beach Road is, the sort of driveway into the beach parking lot. We're going to look if we can put the cables in that road and that driveway and then turn up on East Bay, but we might need to micro tunnel in the shallow part of East Bay closest to the driveway and then go up East Bay Road, similar to what we're doing at the Centerville River for the Park City Wind project. We're not sure yet. We're going to do extensive engineering analysis on that with the town.
I'm not talking about going onto Dowses Road.
Okay.
I'm trying to leave Dowses out of this. I think it's a very fragile environment.
Okay.
But if you go to Long Beach,
Mhm.
go across East Bay to East Bay Road, there's a boat landing.
Sure, yeah.
That's land that's owned by the town of Barnstable.
Right.
All this,
Land is private.
yes.
It is, and I live on East Bay Road, and I will say, I am really opposed to this project. I was opposed to the Vineyard Wind project, because I don't believe in this type of danger to a fragile environment. And now I live on East Bay Road, and I am furious about this project. You're coming up East Bay, not just because I live there, but there's an inlet right there coming up East Bay, where people have worked a long time to pump that out and get it clean so that the birds can come and enjoy it. I am livid at this, and I hope this does not go through, especially up East Bay Road and Riano Avenue. It shouldn't even be in Osterville. So anyway, that's.
Thank you, ma'am.
It's just outrageous what we're having to go through. These people are endangering our community and our environment, our fishing, our everything about it. All for what? For money. You want you want the buck. A lot of people don't like this wind energy anyway. A lot of people don't. So.
Understood, ma'am. A lot of people do, obviously, we all know what's going on in
But
Russia.
if they use other people's environment, yes, and ruin a beautiful, fragile, one-of-a-kind environment on Cape Cod.
Understood, ma'am. Well, first of all, I'd love to meet with you in person to talk more if you'd be willing, but I will say, there's obviously, well, respect that. Obviously, lots of people are not gonna like this, lots of people are gonna like it, but the one thing I will say, this entire area right here between the three projects, going to be enough power for 1.5 million homes in Massachusetts. Obviously, we all know what's going on in Russia right now. We all know what the gas prices are. We all know what's going on with the climate. We really need to think about where we're going to get our energy in the future. And this is a viable, way for us to power our homes for decades to come, and versus continue to use fossil fuels. So, but I respect your point, man. Thank you.
Yes,
I
sir.
have a
Question.
non-
We have a gentleman here who's gonna ask a question.
Of the 1.5 million, is that what you said?
Yeah.
That's available. How much of that is going to be available to the town of Barnstable?
Well, so it's hard to answer that because of how the electric grid
I'm
works.
sorry?
It's hard to answer that because of how the electric grid works.
Not really. If you're putting a substation,
Mhm.
that's transmitting, as I understand substation.
Mhm.
You would know by doing some sort of statistical analysis and say to yourself, we'll have available of the 1.5 million, 200,000 for Barnstable, 100,000 for Barnstable. I don't know.
Well, certainly that could be something the town looks to through our host community agreement of some kind of a.
But you should do that, right?
Well,
Because it's your project and you're making money.
well,
You
we're
should provide that
providing.
back to the town.
Sure. So we're plugging our power between all three projects into Eversource's electric grid for all electric payers to receive that power. If the town, for a host community agreement, wanted to cut off about a piece of that power for its municipal uses or for other purposes for its residents, that would be something that would be part of that agreement. We're also talking to Cape Light Compact as well about power options for them. Obviously, a lot of electric ratepayers in Cape Cod receive their power through the compact. So that's something, we're very interested in, but just the logistics, obviously the big thing we need is our electric grid needs power too. Right now Pilgrim's gone, Brighton Point coal plant's gone, all the big power plants that used to receive our power from are gone. And we're really seeing rising electric rates because we have these small natural gas plants that sell their power at a premium. Our electric, and some of those plants are going to be offering their power upwards of 20 cents per kilowatt hour. Our projects are going to be right around 7 or 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Cape Wind was proposing 15 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour. So just to think of where Cape Wind was proposing at the height, the highest cost power in the electric grid when it was proposing its project. We're now proposing to be the lowest cost, be sort of the bottom line price. So how much that's shifted since Cape Wind is really significant.
May I follow up?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
You still haven't answered the question.
Okay, sir.
How much of the 1.5 million, it doesn't matter what the kilowatt per hour is, how much of it is available to us who live here?
It's just,
Because you're using
yes.
our land
Mhm.
to go through.
Yes,
And I respect the fact that you have to earn a profit,
sure.
but we ought to benefit from that profit as town residents. Particularly our village, if you're gonna use our land.
Understood. I wish the electric grid worked the way you're describing. But once you plug in power to an Eversource or National Grid or any electric grid company anywhere in New England, we're part of what's called the ISO New England connected electric grid through all of New England. That's just how the electric grid is set up. We can't segregate the power in that way unless an entity decided to purchase that power and then take over the selling of that power to individual homeowners and commercial properties. That's
Thank
just
you.
how the electric grid works.
I am. Thank you.
Dick, do you have a question?
Yes, a lot of this, pretty much all of it seems very tentative at this point. So I'll ask a non-substantive question. What is your schedule on the Commonwealth project in particular?
Yeah, thank you for that. So let me see if I have that here. So this project was selected by the state of Massachusetts last year. I'll go through this, and I'm happy to put this in front of you as we talk about it. So this is sort of Park City Wind selected in 2019. Commonwealth Wind is
I have that.
Oh, great, you have that there.
I do.
So we're expected to start state permitting for Commonwealth Wind this fall. And then we're hoping to start onshore installation, which would mean the work at Dowses Beach at some point in 2024. So that would mean whole,
2024.
yeah, maybe 2025. That might be
I also
ambitious.
happen to be a resident of East Bay Road.
Mhm.
That gives me plenty of time to sell my condo.
I appreciate that.
Sir?
Good point.
I'm sitting here listening. This is all decided. It's not.
No.
It sure sounds like it's decided to me. So what are we doing here tonight?
Well, let's talk about Vineyard Wind. So I don't know if anybody followed Vineyard Wind, but Vineyard Wind back in 2017, they had a proposal to land their cables at New Hampshire Avenue in Lewis Bay in the town of Yarmouth. And they spent a lot of time in the town of Yarmouth. And they had a whole, process there. And the Lewis Bay Neighborhood Association and folks in Yarmouth just decided we don't want this. And so Vineyard Wind said, okay. They went and talked to the town of Barnstable. They had a backup option to land at Covell Beach. The town of Barnstable said, we'd like to have conversations about this. The Vineyard Wind team had lots and lots of conversation with the butters and everybody in the Craigville Beach Road area and that part of Centerville. Got buy-in, started talking about ways to incorporate that project, Vineyard Wind, with the sewer project the town had planned in that area. They found a good marriage there and they decided to move forward. So that's a perfect example of, that was they were all steam ahead and going to Lewis Bay and Yarmouth. And it just, the town wasn't interested, the residents weren't interested, it wasn't the right fit, so they moved to Barnstable. So I think, and I hope, we have a long time here, and I know it's easy to make the judgment, that you don't like this. But all I'm asking you is give us a shot. Give us a shot to spend some time, update the plans, take your feedback, think about opportunities for wins and positive developments for the village, as well as, the opportunity for us to bring this project here. Just give us a shot. That's what I'm asking for. And I think if you look at our precedent, if you talk to friends of yours in Centerville, I think you're going to find, yes, obviously the work, the onshore road, the road construction in Centerville has been difficult, but it's been a real win and it's really helping finance what could have been a much more expensive sewer project for those residents in Centerville.
We have one here, and then we'll come back. Go ahead, Deb.
Does it have to go into the town of Osterville? Is there any reason it can't go into Mashpee?
No, the honest reason is because we have a great working relationship with Matt Levesque, with Mark Elzer, town manager, with Dan Santos, your DPW director. We have a rapport and a working relationship, and the town is interested in both the financial revenue, long-term tax revenue. We have a relationship that we've been able to build on trust and results with your town leadership. So we want to come to Barnstable because we want to continue that relationship.
Has the town agreed to Dowses?
No. We told them, here's what we told Mark Ells. We said, we can't make in February. We can't make Craigville Beach work for more cables. So we're going to move forward with Dowses, and he said, we need to bring it to the community. So that's what we're doing here. And that was just a couple weeks ago. So that's where we're at in this. We're proposing landing at Dowses. That proposal is not coming from the town.
But it could go into as far away as Nashville.
It could, we need to somehow get into this West Barnstable substation, because that's where, unfortunately, we have a very, if you ever hear about, we don't have a smart electric grid, we have a very difficult electric grid. And the way this process works, we don't have any other options. We can put a bit of power into the Acushnet substation I talked about earlier on the south coast, but really the place we have the real rights is in West Barnstable. So yes, we could go into Mashpee with the Tri-Yarmouth again, but eventually we'd have to get into West Barnstable. We'd much rather work something out with all of you, the residents of Osterville, and with the town.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, so I think you're reading the room here that Dowses is a non-starter. It's just not gonna fly. I'd say, I think he's gonna read the room that Dowses is a non-starter, but this just isn't gonna fly. But my question isn't for you. I mean, good luck, that's all I can say. But my question is more for our town leaders. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, or planning wise for Osterville that's in various benchmarks of time. And I'm wondering if someone's looking at it in a more integrated way. For example, I feel sorry for our friends and neighbors over there in Craigville, but I do think that getting this project aligned with their sewer lines makes sense. Where we are, we're not scheduled to get sewer lines for like 10 years to 20 years. So I'd be willing to wait for your project until we get our sewer lines, or if your project got our sewer lines sooner, that to me would be a good trade-off. Then the other thing that's happening, or I don't even know if it's happening in Osterville, is there's a community center that's been the source of a lot of anxiety, but you know, that has some construction that's been going on, and there's a lot more. And I mean, it would be really awful if that thing was going and this thing was going. I mean, we live right smack in the middle of the village. We would literally not be able to leave our house if all this stuff was going on. And we can't even like walk to a grocery store. Well, I guess we could walk to the But so I do think that there's some town issues that I'm asking our town leaders to look at in a more considerate way. And I just don't think this is going to go.
I will answer your question about the Osterville Bay property.
Yes. Good.
They're working on the fields.
Yep.
A building is not on the in the cards at this time at all.
Meaning it'll never happen, or the idea
Not
is it
necessarily it'll never happen, but it's not in the I'd say in the near future. Okay, it's just not in the budget, and it's not something the town wants to move forward with. We are moving forward with all those fields, okay, and likely a playground for children. But the building at this point is not foreseen in the capital improvement budgets for the near future.
Okay.
I think Matt can agree with that. So I think we can take that off the table for the time.
John, can we send the plans to Pat and put it in his budget?
There you go. Well, I will say, we've heard about that. We've heard about, I know a couple of East Bay residents, we've heard about a sidewalk need on East Bay Road. You know, at least for the Covell Beach project, we're rebuilding the entire bathhouse there at Covell Beach. You know, we want to hear about if there are opportunities that the town is amenable to being part of a host community agreement that would be a benefit to the village, whether it be helping an investment in the community, in the Osterville community building, or sidewalks in East Bay, or some other idea. We're certainly open to those kind of ideas if they could be help be financed by our project. That's not at all out of the question.
Okay, sir, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. I'm also a resident of East Bay Road. Question being, and this maybe also for town leaders, the beginning stages of replacing gas lines, so some digging going on there. Are there any other proposed projects actively for the street? You just referenced sidewalks. There's certainly rumor about that. Is there anything active at the moment?
The only thing of which I'm aware of is sidewalks, and the only thing that's been budgeted is the survey for the sidewalks.
Got it. Survey.
So you all that work.
I'm sorry. Ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't, ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Oh, it's Judy Harrington.
Judy Harrington, hi, Matthew Levesque.
Hi, Matthew.
So to answer your question, it's a very good point of what you're saying. This could, I'm not saying again, there's no cake that's baked in regards to this. We're just talking about it. We do have a good working relationship. As a town leader, we're looking for sources of income because this comprehensive wastewater management project is so extensive and so expensive. And, we've earmarked a lot of this money. The hosting agreement hasn't even been earmarked yet. What he's talking about, property taxes just for that cable, it's $1 million a year. They could be the largest taxpayer in our town in regards to that. And I understand Osterville should benefit from that, just like Centerville is benefiting from it, and I get that. And I would be in favor of that, even though I'm not necessarily representing that area in my precinct. To your point, absolutely, we would look towards moving up that sewer project, which would go a long way, because I'm sure most people in this room understand that we're being sued by Conservation Law Foundation because we're not moving fast enough in regards to remediating nitrogen in our water, in our system. So we are doing our very best to try to accelerate that, that project. This would go a long way to doing that, and maybe even save, give them something we could bring to Conservation Law Foundation and say, hey, we're going to be trying to put something in here and ramp up Osterville long before and bring out a main vein of sewer right out to 28 that could also help Katuitt and move up those projects greatly, honestly, on their dime. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying that I'm just saying that could be a benefit. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm not even necessarily in favor of anything. I'm here just to represent and be here for as a town councilor because David has to recuse himself from this subject matter. So that's the only, I'm not spying or anything like that. I'm just here to offer any kind of information. But yes, to your point.
What would you suggest in terms of putting that idea forward? Like, how would we do that?
That would be something that the leadership would definitely be myself and Vice President Paula Schnepp, from Marston's Mills, that we would have that discussion with Mark Ells, Mark Milne, our finance director, and move that along. So again,
would you want a letter from us or a petition?
Yeah, that would be great, of course. Yeah, I mean, your input that's why we're here. That's why we're listening to that type of thing. And it's so to answer, and I understand people's interest in regards to businesses, right? We just dug on West Main Street, Butler Sporting Goods in the middle of just before spring season, you know what I mean? Hyannis Honda. We're doing our very best to make sure that it's passable so that local businesses can stay open and get. I'm not saying it's going to not negatively affect, but if sewer's coming down the road anyway, well, what, and I'm not looking to, I'm not trying to debate you or anything. It's something I'm saying. I'm just saying we're digging a hole eventually anyway. If we're going to be digging a hole anyway, let them dig it, let them pay for it, and we'll put our sewer pipes along their cable.
Sir, do you have something to say? Chairman?
There's a problem with sewers, as everybody knows, and that is a personal problem for homeowners. The $25,000 hookup that it may cost the homeowner to hook up to the sewer. So, if you make them get here sooner rather than later, you're going to face that hookup cost sooner rather than later.
Yeah, but
there's a lot of consequences.
Your house will be worth so much more with a sewer than a septic. You'll get that 25 back. Well, eventually.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Patrick and Ken Kimmel, who's the VP of Project Development for Avangrid, started recently. They started in January, both of them. I think you started one in January, say 15th, and one was the end of the month.
Yep.
I have a question that first followed up a landing location. Is it possible that we can see the engineering analysis that shows Dowses Beach is the most viable or the preferred viable option for phase 3?
I will ask, I don't know the answer to that, John.
We'd like to have somebody with some knowledge take a look at that on our own basis.
Yep.
One of the other questions we asked is that, and they were nice enough to answer it, We were interested in understanding the timing and the content of conversations the companies had with town officials in Barnstable about potential landing sites and routes for phase 3. And I asked him to summarize that. Do you want me to summarize read your answer?
If you could, that would be
But
great.
We have a follow-up.
Yep, that's great.
As far as conversation with Barnstable, they said the first conversation with Barnstable, town of Barnstable, was in late January, before Ken Kimmel started out with our CEO, Bill White, and Mark Ells. We updated Mark that engineering analysis was on the way at the time on a second landing at Craigville Beach and was due to be completed in February. We discussed that we were looking at Dowses Beach if a second Craigville landing was found to be not feasible. The meetings we have had since with the town have mainly focused on items related to Park City Wind. In February, it was confirmed that second landing at Craigville was not feasible, as we've heard tonight. So Ken then approached Mark Ells to notify him of that, indicate we were now looking to move forward with a landing at plan at Dowses Beach, and asked for an opportunity to brief the council, which we did on March 17th. And we also reached out to our Councilor Bogan on March 3rd. Of course, all here, the Dowses landing is sort of a surprise. We're looking to understand the history of the conversation about Dowses as a landing spot, and not just what you and Ken have been involved in only for the last few months.
Sure.
We want to know back to where, because you share a lot of the same management, going back to Vineyard Wind, which is the first part of this. We also want time to share this with residents here, and that means all of the residents here. And I think the best way to do that is for an annual meeting. We're going to discuss that tonight. I think it's going to be on August 17th. But that's where we can get the biggest bang for the buck with the amount of members, year-round residents that can come to those meetings. We usually get over 100 people for that meeting. I think it would be good, and we can do some advertising to let people know, A, the facts, what you've told us, and then they can come with their own questions after that. Go ahead.
Will that be too far along in this process?
Well, from what you said, we've got a lot of time, so I think that would be something that would be, would be good.
And we're going to continue to have, we have the flyer here, we have on April 28th, we have another open house here. We're going to schedule more open houses in evening times. John has been, nice enough to offer he could help us get in here after the library closes. We want to have more open house opportunities. We're presenting in front of the Osterville Rotary Club next Thursday. We're going to be around, but we would value the opportunity to have that conversation at the August annual meeting. But we're still going to be around the village a lot and meeting with various folks and reaching out to neighbors.
Now, taking into account what we said about you guys have just started, so this goes back a little bit farther, but in November of 2021, which is 5 months or 4 months ago, one of your Avangrid employees went to the Kentuit Civic Association and talked about Dowses as a potential phase 3 landing spot.
Okay.
Why did the company talk to the Kentuit Civic Association about Dowses before it shared the information with the town?
Not sure. Do you know the employee who that was?
Yes, it was Rose.
Rose DaCosta.
And
Okay.
also I have the minutes from that meeting.
Okay.
It was Rose DaCosta and Mr. Rodstrom.
Chris Rodstrom. Okay, he's the permitting director for Vineyard Wind.
And to quote what is on this is from the minutes of the Kentuit Civic Association. Okay. The third project is still in infancy, but is anticipated to be similar, with cables coming ashore somewhere to the west of Park City Wind cables, perhaps Dowses Beach. So that was November 2021. So that was not too long ago that they were talking about it. And then in October of 2019, the town council here passed a resolution authorizing the town management to begin negotiation with the company about amendments to the community host agreement.
Okay.
Including but not limited to adding phase 3 project in Barnstable. That means the company talked with the town in 2019 about phase 3 and give us information about those conversations in Dowses. Now I have the actual 2019 minutes from the town council.
Okay.
And the summary that was resolved by the town council and passed unanimously read as follows: that the town council authorizes the town manager to commence negotiation with Vineyard Wind LLC regarding amendments to the host community agreement executed between the town of Barnstable and Vineyard Wind LLC, which amendments may include but shall not be limited to the specific task of adding an optional for phase 3 project in Barnstable.
Yep.
So this is on October 10th, 2019. Okay, so like I said, we heard about this a week and a half ago. First we ever heard about it. So we want some information from you to tell us what representatives, other than the two of you that you just started this company, and give us some background on that if that's possible.
Okay.
In August 2021, the town council had an update from management about continuing discussion with the company about community host agreement for a potential phase 3. That update also said the town would continue discussion, in quotes, continue discussion with the company on phase 3 project, including a discussion of proposed phase 3 landing and cable routing. This is on video, also on channel 18, and this is the actual document where they were talking about that. It says, this is the town manager's report that night of August 19, 2021, which is last summer. We have continued our discussion with Vineyard Wind regarding an update to the existing host agreement, HCA, for phase 2 and a potential phase 3. We will continue a discussion with Vineyard Wind on a phase 3 project, including a discussion of the proposed landing and cable routing. We will keep you advised of our progress in this matter. So there's examples of your company talking to the town, and we'd like to have some more information from you about, especially about what those conversations included and documents that will document those. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Do you mind if I respond to that real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Anything I'm saying you can respond to.
No, absolutely. So I appreciate that information. I will say I'm Eagle Scout, Scout's honor. When I started with Avangrid Renewables in January, my boss's boss, our CEO, Bill White, the first conversation I had with him is he was bringing me up to speed on strategy for Commonwealth Wind. He said, I want to make it work to go into Craigville Beach, focused on Craigville Beach. He ordered the engineering analysis before we look at other options to the west. So when I onboarded with the company, that's what I was told. I want to explain what could be part of that sort of a restructuring that happened, why I'm part of the team or the background here. So this whole lease area was previously owned by Vineyard Wind, a 50-50, as I said at the beginning, 50-50 owned between Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners and Avangrid Renewables. Those two companies late last year decided they wanted to restructure their assets. They decided we're going to keep Vineyard Wind as a 50-50 LLC with this lease area here. And then Avangrid Renewables is going to take full ownership of the area in the yellow, Park City Wind and Commonwealth Wind. And then Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners took a lease area farther to the southeast. At that time, once that restructure was done, Avangrid Renewables started expanding their team, which included me getting hired, including Ken Kimball, my boss, getting hired. In terms of those conversations where Dowses was brought up, I don't have any knowledge of them, but I do want to be honest that in 2021, a lot of the planning for the Commonwealth Wind proposal that was made to the state and chosen by the Baker administration in December was done by the Vineyard Wind team. Some folks might know Nate Mayo is the Director of Public Affairs for Vineyard Wind. Rose DaCosta, who mentioned at that time, was working for Vineyard Wind. She now works with me at Avangrid. Rachel Pachter, their development officer. So those folks would have been having those conversations with town manager Els. But I want to say I've told you at the beginning, John and everyone, what is my accurate understanding. I'm certainly happy to look at those documents and try to find more information, especially from the Vineyard Wind team, as they remain in employment separately from our Avangrid Renewables team. I do want to say one last thing on the host community agreements. So there is each host community agreement would be separate. So there is a host community agreement that was signed several years ago between Vineyard Wind LLC and the town of Barnstable. There is a host community agreement still being negotiated between Park City Wind LLC, which is 100% owned by Avangrid Renewables, and the town of Barnstable. That has not been signed. Town manager Els, and I know President Levesque, are considering a resolution before the town council to commence negotiations between our company and Commonwealth Wind at a future date. That has not happened yet. I have heard that town manager Els often talks about amending the host community agreement or reopening the host community agreement. In actuality, they're all separate agreements. So I do know that that agreement with Vineyard Wind is done, signed, settled. we have not signed one for Park City Wind. The town council has not authorized the town manager to begin negotiations on the Commonwealth Wind host community agreement. So that's as accurate information as I know, but I'm happy to help try and find the background from the Vineyard Wind team to answer your question.
I think it would help us to get some information and some documents from you about your negotiations with the town.
Okay.
I'm sure we could get those from the town, but I think it just getting from you also would be helpful.
I'm happy to ask the Vineyard. I don't have
John,
them.
I could help that, being the president for the last 2 years, a year and a half anyway, I could shed some light a little bit on that. So what happens is there is a lot of discussion in regards to a number of locations. And so it really is not, there's nothing negotiated whatsoever. In fact, as president, I've asked Pat and Avangrid to put the brakes on any type of, and I have not put on the agenda any sort of resolve to even negotiate, because these conversations need to take place. Yep. I believe I've detailed that, Councilor Bogan, Patrick as well. And I've also directed Patrick to reach out to each and every councilor to ask them their input in regards to that. Maybe where mistakes were made at Covell Beach to address the fact that some of those things 100% did not go correctly, that there needs to be some improvement on those things. Before this agreement is even signed, I wanted to make sure that the second wave was that, so that it's, again, nothing's assumed. Originally, it was going to go right down Main Street, Centerville. We said, hold on, there's some talk about that. Let's get another direction we can go around that. So we're not disrupting businesses. We're not doing those things. We're considering all input whatsoever. To one, we have a passion for clean energy. We want to try to save the environment. Two, it's happening. Why not Barnstable benefit from it and get taxpayer dollars and help us with our comprehensive wastewater management plan at the same time? And again, try to make it clear and transparent of all those different things. There were a number of properties that were being talked about before even Dowses maybe was in the conversation as a plan C, D, who knows? But there were other considerations being taken place. When it came time for it to be Dowses Beach, I said, you better start outreaching. You know what I mean? And that's what I said. Yeah. And so, and I told Mark, put the brakes on it. I don't want any, we're not putting a resolve forth yet. There may be something coming forward so that negotiations can start, but this needed to happen first. So just so you know, there were conversations, I'm sure. I can't remember exact dates. Actual negotiations? No, there's no negotiations. And that, in that meeting, I think the one you referenced when that resolved, that was Jimmy Crocker's last meeting. He really was the one who got phase one, phase two as the president, vice president at the time, moving forward in that direction. And then his vision was that they wanted to have a phase three. They knew there was going to have a phase three. Let's try to make it possible so that Barnstable can benefit from it like we did with the first two phases. Thank you.
Thank you. I think understanding the whole concept and the whole process would be good for our village to understand where it came from. So anything you can help us with, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
There's another question we asked you about filings from either state or federal. And given that you guys are new employees, can you please check any company records prior to your working together and coming on board? Finally, communicate any government agency that mentions Dowses, not really anything else that's in that respect. We got your information about the financials, and I think that's all the questions I have for you. I can share these with you if you'd like.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
We have Gail. Do you have
One more question?
Yeah.
Originally, it was just two, the blue and the yellow.
Sure.
And then the yellow has gotten divided into two subjects.
Yep.
Second one. Was all the yellow going in on one thing? Why is it now to go in three different places? Was that just going to be going the short two different places when it was just two?
It's my understanding that this yellow area has always been envisioned very likely as two projects, but it was dependent on us getting being selected by Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, one of the states that are doing auctions or doing procurements, asking for offshore wind developers who own lease areas like we do to bid and put forward a proposal for cheap electricity and wind turbines to be put in their area. So that's what we made a proposal to the state of Massachusetts. We were selected for the Commonwealth Wind proposal last December. In terms of the lease, the big thing here, Gail, is the wind turbines technology keeps evolving. So every year one wind turbine, you get more and more output as they're developing smarter, better manufactured wind turbines. So how much it's looked at by how much megawatt yield of power each potential lease area can provide. And every year, your output of power keeps growing and growing of what you can get out of a single wind turbine. So that's what's kind of challenging about figuring out, how much, right now, this whole lease area is 800 megawatts. 10 years from now, you can get 800 megawatts from maybe a half or a quarter of that lease area with more efficient wind turbines, because they just keep making better and better ones. So that's the variable there. That's hard to figure out. But I do believe this has always been thought of as three project areas. Sort of Vineyard Wind at the top, Park City in the middle, and then what we now call Commonwealth Wind at the bottom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question about this combination of the sewer project with your over at Covell Beach and Craigville. If you didn't have the sewer project piece factoring in, would this have go quicker? Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
I think I read on one spot that you try to do this during the off season when it's not like the beach season.
That is something that's
There is such a thing as in not beach season, but anyway, would it have gone faster without the sewer project?
I think the construction you're now seeing, and I don't work for Vineyard Wind, but what I've heard from them is yes, because efforts are being, especially let's just think Strawberry Hill Road, because both the cable underneath the road for Vineyard Wind and the sewer main line are going in Strawberry Hill at the same time, it is taking longer. If you were digging up the road just to put the offshore wind duct bank, you'd go faster. But that's natural that the deal the Strawberry Hill residents and that both the town DPW department, the councilors in Centerville, and Vineyard Wind have made is, it's going to take us a little longer to install both at the same time. We're going to go a little slower in terms of progress up the road, but it means we only have to do this once. So, but yes, I believe it would go slower it would go faster if you're just doing one but not the other, for sure. And Council President Levesque can answer that far better than I could. Thank you.
Any other questions for Patrick? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, John. I just want to say my business cards are up here. I'm available to meet with anybody anytime here in the village. I'm happy to take a tour. And I'll be accessible, and I promise all of you I will always be honest and transparent with information. And thank you very much.
And I think we're going to be shooting for August 17th.
Yeah.
So we put that on your mind.
Thanks, John.
We have a few more things.
Thank you so much.
I didn't mean to give you a hard
No,
Yes, she
I like
did.
it.
She's always.
I think it's important. It's your village. This is your village. It's important. Yeah.
Matt, one more thing, Matt, if there is, when you have met, I'm sure there's minutes. If you have any minutes for any meetings that are available to send to us, we'd appreciate it between any negotiations or whatever that we'd like to see.
Sure.
Those are
Honestly,
public
as far
documents.
as, this is, again, at this point, this is their idea.
I know, but there's been discussion, so there should be minutes. So if you've got minutes, then send them to us, please.
No, you'd have to talk to Mark Ellis about that per se, you know what I mean? Because I haven't had, other than,
Okay.
you know what I mean? I haven't really.
Can you mention that to Mark for me? And I'll have David mention it also for,
Yeah.
because there's any public meetings has minutes. So moving on. Thanks again, Patrick.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Town council report, David? What? Hey, Matt, we're continuing our meeting, so if you can pick up, yeah, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Go ahead, David.
Actually, very quick, because you've already talked about the Bay School. The only thing I don't know is the schedule on the current construction, when they're gonna finish on the fields and the playground. The playground is gonna be a while, because there's no budget for the equipment for the playground. Yes.
Can I ask you, so did it get, I thought at one point it was in the budget, but did the sewer project remove that from the budget?
No, what was in the budget was the renovation of the tennis courts and for certain survey work The field work may have been in the budget, the building certainly was not in the budget. So when John referenced earlier, the building is not gonna happen anytime unless something profound happens to change the economics, not gonna happen, at least in the next 10 years. So what you're looking at now are the fields. I think we can find the money for the playground out of CPC funds. And then, like I said, the only thing I don't know is the schedule of completion, because I know there's been a lot of work and a lot of dirt that's been moved. But I tried to reach out to Dan Santos. That was on me. I meant to reach out earlier today to find out. There's somebody who called me about it who lives on First a couple of weeks ago. I reached out to Dan Santos, and unfortunately, his people got in touch with her directly, so I didn't even find out what they told her. And I meant to reach out today to find out what's going on, so I'll find that out. East Bay, like I said, the survey work, I think maybe, I know it was being done because somebody told me, they saw somebody and said, what are you doing? And he said, I'm doing a survey for sidewalks. And then we'll find out how much it's gonna cost to actually do the sidewalks. The only other thing is the local comprehensive plan. Jack! Local comprehensive plan, that's what's going on right now. The local comprehensive planning committee is being selected. There were 54 applicants. That was narrowed down to 23 or 22. Had all-day meetings yesterday because that's Mark L's, Councilor Jen Cullum, and myself. Starting at 7 a.m. yesterday through 6:30 last night to finish the 22 or 23 interviews. Mark L's will then make the selection of the ultimately 17, but some of those are constituted by members of certain committees. So for example, there were 7 residents of Osterville that applied for the Osterville position because each village is supposed to have a representative. Well, one of those is Steve Costello, who's the chair of the planning board. So, okay, if Steve gets, and I'm not saying he will, but because it was also Bob Twist and Steve Robichaud, who are on the planning board, who also applied for a position on the committee. So that'll get narrowed down to 17 total. And those people will then work over the next 18 months, doing a lot of community outreach to see what the citizens of the 7 villages want. But over the next 10 years, they'll local comprehensive plan. That's all I have, unless people have questions.
Any questions for Dave? Thank you, Dave. Sorry for the noise. That happens all the time.
We're gonna get by with no questions. Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, sir.
So while we're speaking of the Bay School fields, are those going to be sodded or seeded? Is sod going to be placed down or is it seed?
I'm a lawyer, not an agronomist. I have no idea.
Because that
Well,
would
we
be
have
a
an answer for you.
consideration as to whether those would be available for this summer, or not, correct?
Yeah, I talked to the engineering department last month, and they're way behind because of the weather, because of delay, the contractors had delays, believe it or not. So I'm thinking it's gonna be seeded in the fall. Feedback that I got.
So just remain the condition that it is now until the fall.
But I'll find out Ron and get back to you on that. I'm sure they made good progress even this week. It's gonna rain tomorrow, but they're moving along. The well is in, the irrigation is in, so they might expedite that. You really don't want to seed it in the spring because you're gonna get weeds and stuff, but that's not, I don't know that for sure.
Now, are they the only company that's involved with that project? And what else is going on? Is there any other consideration as completion around there? Are there going to be like grandstands, or is there some idea of using the old building there for restrooms? Is that going to be renovated for that purpose? And what about where the old tennis courts are? Is that going to be left as just an area of just refuse material, or what?
I think that was gonna be the old tennis courts for parking, kind of temporary parking, but I'll get an update to get to you, because I don't know myself on that. John, do you know if you know? What you heard?
It probably will be tempered. That's where the new building was supposed to go. At this point, it's up in the air. It may come back someday, maybe not, but it's not anytime soon. Okay, and the old building has got black mold in it, the community center that still sits there. Okay, and we believe that'll be something that'll be in the budget to be torn down at some point, hopefully in the near future. Okay, because this can't be used and it's a danger and a hazard. Okay, so the Unfortunately, the funds for the playground weren't put into this original plan. We thought it was going to be, but they're bringing that up from the council in the next CIP, community improvement, from what I understand, to have those playgrounds. And those playgrounds will be where they were originally put, which would be between the tennis courts and the AT&T building, close to West Bay Road. Okay, there's another, there's talk about just a walking trail around the whole site, just a casual walking trail. And the other thing that was not included was a street hockey combined basketball court that would be close to where the other basketball court was. And so that's basically the entire project at this point. So we're hoping they'll get the fields done, and that'll be it at this point, except for the playground. We're gonna try to push that as fast as possible.
So the company right now that's doing the field.
Yeah.
Are using where the old tennis courts are as a
Yes.
staging area for
Yes.
their materials and for
Yeah.
their equipment and
Yeah.
such. Are they responsible for returning that to some kind of a finished situation, or are they just gonna leave it like that? And I don't understand. Is that where, I mean, are they going to put in something like asphalt for temporary parking or something? Or
I don't have the answer to that question.
I'll find out, Ron, this week. I'll talk to him tomorrow, because I'm curious myself.
But I agree with you, it shouldn't be left like that.
I wouldn't
So
think
we'll
so.
see what we can do there. Okay. Real quick update, what's happening let's say, our annual meeting. We have Gail, we're looking for, I believe, August, you say 17th, is that it?
17th, yeah.
17th, okay. Does that work for everybody?
It's got to be its own directory.
Okay, so it's on the directory. We're gonna try for 6:30 or 7?
7, you say.
Okay, depends on if we're outside or in, but I don't think we'll try to stay in this time. We'll do it here. Okay, 7 o'clock on August 17th. That's all I have. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, call for adjournment.
No,
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you back there.
What about old business?
Jeff.
You've got Jeff.
Got Jeff.
Sure.
Jeff, all right, you came here for that. Okay, I didn't see you back there.
No.
And I was gonna push that to the next one.
No, John, I came for the other two matters. I just wanted to apologize to Dave.
Oh,
for
don't worry
talking
about
in
it.
the back.
Don't worry about
So
it.
that-
No, why don't you give us an
Wasn't
update?
just
Why don't
you.
you give us the update, Jeff? I was gonna make it quick, but
Yeah.
I figured I'd do it next meeting, but why don't you do it while you're here?
No, okay. No, by the way, that's, the second matter was unbelievable that you guys just engaged with the whole cable thing and so on. Tying into the sewer and valves and so on, but anyways, that's 58 Wiano Avenue. I'm in the building department, just waiting for a permit from the building department for the demolition of the home on the corner. It's been unoccupied for 23 years. It's in beyond board condition. And I did what I was supposed to do. 19 months ago, I went forward and proposed for the removal of the building with an 18-month demolition delay. So there's no value in the building. I don't know what the next play is, but I know the building as it is a horrid eyesore, and we're gonna remove it and then examine where things are. It will not be a dust bowl, through the summer. So I promise everybody, for anyone or everyone who doesn't know, I own the Beacon Gardens, the old Bush Gardens, and if I could do that, make it look like that, I think everyone would be proud. So, but I can promise you that the building will be taken down, it'll be cleaned up, and then we'll see what it looks like from there. But I really came back in to apologize.
No apologies necessary. All right, thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Okay, next meeting is May 3rd here at the library, and seeing no other comment. Thank you for all staying.